I'm Sharon, the host of the Informed Advocate podcast. And so, on this episode, what we're going to talk about is ways to support personal caregivers. And again, personal caregivers are pretty much family and friends. And also remember, when it comes to personal caregivers, in that if someone is a professional caregiver, such as someone in the medical field, mental health field, first responders, or a teacher, or anything of that you are a personal caregiver as well, because you're home. So you have a home life too. So I want everybody to remember that. And also remember, when it comes to the Informed Advocate podcast, when it comes to caregivers, you are self caregivers because you are taking care of yourself just as much as you are taking others. And so one of the things that I really want to talk about is how to support personal caregivers. And then in another episode, we'll talk about how to support professional caregivers. So, this podcast, we're going to focus on personal caregivers, and shall I say, personal self caregivers. We're going to add that in, make sure we add that in. And again, as a caregiver, you can be someone who is supporting someone or caring for someone with chronic medical conditions, or someone dealing with mental health crisis, or just with mental illness in and of itself. Because especially with someone, it can be severe anxiety. It can be depression. It can be bipolar, of that sort. And so, and again, when it comes to family and friends who are supporting someone who are having those experiences, whether it's medical or in the mental health area, in that it's a lot on them too, that it's a lot of stress, and it can lead to burnout and even other health related concerns. And so one of the ways that probably the best way that you can support someone is to ask, is just to ask, how can I support you? Because a lot of times in either one, whether it's dealing with someone, if someone has a family member or friend who is experiencing a chronic medical condition, and it can be anything. I mean, it can be like heart disease, chronic diabetes, just, and of course, something like cancer, of that sort. And then again, someone who's dealing with, let's say, a mental health crisis, or a mental health crisis. And so a lot of times people don't know what to do. It's kind of like, I don't even know how to help someone. And and sometimes you may not. I've seen it, and like on the medical side, I've experienced it personally, where others didn't know how to help me, by me, dealing with certain things, when it came to a family member, or family members, should I say, medical conditions when they were going through their thing. And so, but the best thing that you can do is just offer your support, offer your help, and just ask. Now, when you're asking, they may not know how, because if you've never been through it, one thing I will say, it's almost kind of like a rhythm to it. There may be a slowdown, there may be a rhythm to it. But I can remember for myself on a personal basis, there was a period of time when family members when they were having their medical emergency, medical crisis, and everything. And it's almost like there's none stop. I was living out of town, was going back and forth. Either I was working on the weekend, a second job, and then going to, visit and support, going to visit my family members, and also supporting other family members who were other caregivers as well. And so, in seeing all of that, with my own personal support, people don't know how to help. And it's like, oh, I knew you were handling a lot. I didn't want to interfere. But a lot of times what ends up happening is that uh, we do need that break. So I'm like, I will carve out time. If someone asks me to go to lunch, I'm like, oh yeah, sure, carve out that time in order to do that, because that is really important. And so you can offer someone, to because it depends on the situation, because they may not be able to go out. And of course, with this going on in society, even though people are going out more, but it's still different in and of its sense, in of itself. And so ask, how can you support them? The other thing is observe. Just, when you're checking on them, if you are around them, observe what you may think, how you may be able to offer support, who you may be able to assist and provide that. So that's the other thing that you can do. And the other thing is to, I kind of call it, sometimes you may hear some people say, sit in the fire. But basically, just to be able to sit and be around that person, offer them comfort. Sometimes people may not want to, talk. I mean, just generally talk, just talking and having conversations, not that someone needs to talk about. Because that's the other thing we need to make sure that we're being very careful of. You can open the door, but do not make it an expectation. It's like we want to be, for whatever reason, us being humans, we have this curiosity. And sometimes some people feel like they're supposed to know, especially if you're family and friends, of what's going on. But remember too that anything that's repetitive is going to impact us. And so if someone continually to repeat what is going on with them or their family member that they're supporting and taking care of, that can cause them even more stress, especially if it's already a stressful situation. So be cautious of that, I would say. And so the other thing is you can offer, to run errands for the person, and also just check in just to say hello, to be able to do that as well, because that can offer them, to have a mental break. And again, like I said, there's a rhythm to this. And when I say this, it's just meaning that sometimes the person can really be awful busy and they may not even know how what help do they need, how you can help. It's almost like be creative and observe. And one thing I will say too, a lot of times people have a habit of saying, well, if you need me, just call me. Nah, you can say that, but have in mind that you call and offer. And even if the person to say, no, I'm okay, just do it anyway. Because you never know. And so now for the persons who are the caregivers directly, if you're, providing support for a family friend, when others ask you, how can I support you? If you're able to articulate that, if you're able to say that, because again, you may not be able to, and you just may not know because there's so much going on. This is your ask when someone asks you, and to be in a place to be able to receive that as well, because you don't have to take it all alone, especially when someone offer. And there'll be other discussions about sometimes when you ask there's nothing there and things like that, whether it comes from the community or when it comes to, even when you ask family and friends. And we'll have further discussions about that in future episodes. And I also remember on the previous episode, we've talked about 555 stress busters, which are 5 steps, 5 minutes, 5 days. And so the hope would be to do them every day, but if you can do them 5 days a week, then that's even better. And I would just say, just listen to the previous episode to get those 5 steps. The other thing is check in with yourself. And part of that is the 555 stress busters. That is a really good way for you to check in with yourself. So definitely check out the previous episode of that. And to be able to, as I said before, to be able to accept support. And I would say sometimes you may need to use discernment about that as well. But when support is out there, to be able to be in a place where you are able to. And I realized too, as I said, I talked about that rhythm, meaning that you're not able to slow down, because especially if there's multiple appointments, getting your loved one from one place to another, and you just really need somebody to jump in and do whatever it is that they need to do of being supportive, because you're not able to slow down. And I've been there, I understand. One thing I will say that I discovered and learned afterwards is that we really do need to take some time to be able to get inside our bodies and just sit. And it's not a worry. It's not that, because what I've discovered, it's not always that we're worrying. We're just, our body, because of the stress of what's going on, is definitely reacting, to that. And the last thing is to just have some laughter, have some humor in your life, whether that is talking to family, friends. Again, this is directly for those of you who are caregivers. Have some humor. If you need to watch something funny or listen to something funny, or if there's that family friend you can count on, every time you talk to them, they're going to say something that's going to make you laugh. Definitely have that, because that just going to produce all of those good old chemicals in there. Because the whole purpose of all of this, when someone is offering support, and also with you as a self-caregiver, that you are making sure that you are focusing on your own self-care, is that it allows you to have that mental break, because it is stressful. I mean, we need to say it how it is. How much we love, our family and our friends, and we are going to support them at least as much as we can. But at the same time, in doing so, it is stress on our own body, because again, go back to a previous episode when I talked about stress and trauma. And so kind of like with that rhythm that I was talking about, it's kind of like those are triggers in and of itself. And again, it's stressful in itself. And it's kind of like, is it causing trauma, to our bodies? Because again, it sometimes when these things are going on, it keeps us in that survivor mode, that fight, flight, freeze. And so the whole purpose of um, being in a place where you're able to receive any kind of support, it pretty much keeps the body settled and it has less tension. And so that you can be as healthy as you can be. And so when we're able to offer that support, to others, and again, it's what you're able to do. Of course, now it's so different. Things are better, but still, but even before the pandemic, I mean, sometimes it's people, schedules and things like that. And so as a self-caregiver, again, in order for you to support others, is for you to take care of yourself. And self-care is the key. It is like the ultimate key. It's the gateway for you to be supported, to take care, so you can have the energy and the mental clarity. So when they're, again, being an informed advocate, and especially if you're making decisions for people, and even if you're not making decisions for them per se, but you may be one to kind of help interpret things for them, because sometimes they may not be in a good place to make informed decisions for themselves, and you're able to be able to explain all of that. So it's almost like to be able to refresh yourself. And there are people out there who wants the help, and then sometimes they're just not able to get it. And we'll talk about that again in future episodes, because there's just so much that goes into it. And again, if you know someone who's dealing with has a lot of stress, because they are the primary caregiver, the secondary caregiver of someone, because I can definitely attest, even just in being a secondary caregiver of someone, of a family member, it is just as stressful. And so again, as self-caregivers, the gateway of supporting others is how much you're able to, really support and take care of yourself. So thank you for listening to this episode of Informed Advocate Podcast.